Hello, peeps. Welcome back. Today's episode, I actually got off Chat GPT. I was looking for just different topics. There's a book I'm reading right now, and I don't want to talk about it until I'm done reading it. There's a couple of them, actually. So I have some really good things coming up, and I also do have I finally got another book from an author that I love, that has a similar and kind of different, but similar trauma-based stories. And so I'm hoping to get her on the podcast very soon here, because now I got her second book, which is similar to my second book coming out. And so that's so exciting. So I can't wait to interview her on her take on her self-help book, because she also did a memoir first, and then now she has her workbook. And it's just like we're similar in these lines of what we're doing with our careers, which is so cool. And so so those are some things that are coming up. And so I was kind of like, brain fog, what am I going to talk about? And so I asked Chat GPT. I don't even know what that stands for. I'm so old. But it kind of came up with some good ideas. And so one of the ones that I'm pretty sure I've done an episode on this before, but it kind of brought up some different topics on this subject. And so I thought it would be worth a shot to talk about, was mothering without a map. Ooh, okay. I like that title. So it was basically, if you're a parent now, how has your experience as a unmothered shaped your approach to parenting? So I thought that was a really good subject, because like I said, I think I have done a previous episode on something like that, but I think it's been a while. And so it depends on how you've processed your own childhood and made sense of it. If you've done the work to really know, like, I have been through trauma. You want to acknowledge that I wasn't raised in a healthy environment. I never say normal, because I don't think there's any such thing as a normal family. I think we're all crazy. I think there's different levels of crazy, but I would say, a healthy family, families that don't scream at each other, families that can talk to each other, families that don't beat each other up, families that don't ignore each other, families that aren't just disconnected completely. If you've experienced those kind of things, and this is, strictly, let's say, from your mother, because this is the UnMothered podcast, if you have experienced being unmothered and having these different things that your mom has or hasn't done in your childhood with you, you don't have a roadmap to know what that looks like. You have seen it in other families, little bits here and there. But as a whole, now you become a mom and you're like, oh, what do I do with this? Like, how am I supposed to be as a mom? And the reason I checked this out and decided to go with this is because I was on a podcast. I was a guest on a podcast recently, and I was asked this question. And if you want to hear that interview, it's the Counterculture Mom, and you can find her on Instagram. And she just posted our interview on there. And it was really interesting how she posed this question of, like, well, how did you mother, being unmothered, like, what happened when you became a mom? Like, how were you as a mother? And I was like, oh, that's such a good question, because looking back now, like, at the time, I thought I was being like such a good mom. Like, I'm trying to, dot all cross the T's and dot the I's and do all the things perfectly and keep it in a box and don't go outside the lines and be a good Christian and, just pray and do all these things. But inside I was struggling, because I hadn't really faced the things that actually had happened to me in childhood that was huge trauma, a lot of trauma. And so I was faking my way through it and just trying to pretend that I had it all together. And I would even hold Bible studies at my house, and we would talk about parenthood and motherhood and things like that. And I was learning from other women because I was just like, well, I don't know. What do you do with that? And so it brought me back to that time when I had these young girls and I was struggling to find out the magic of what it took to be a good mom. So I just wanted to dive into how that worked or didn't work, and also how you might be able to see yourself in these parenting styles and how we can improve on them if we need to. So this is really for, I know I have some young women that are becoming moms. I know there's some listeners that are already moms of like grammar school kids. Maybe their kids are starting to go into high school, that kind of thing. You know, this kind of subject, you don't have to say, oh, it's too late, I'm not going to be able to help them now because they're going into high school or whatever. No, you can change the way you parent today. Like, it doesn't have to be, I was constantly changing and evolving. I changed and evolved after my kids were grown. I have gone back and talked to them about different things, and we've had beautiful conversations, and they've said, you know, we saw it in you. We knew there were things you were struggling with. They were gracious kids, and they have forgiven me for that. And they knew that, you know, they knew motherhood was a struggle for me because they had seen my mom. They knew what I was going through. And so it doesn't give you a pass to just ignore all that and not try to work through it. It gives you an opportunity to say, well, what can I do now to change those effects of like what I automatically go to as a protection? How can I change and map out a different kind of, and be a different kind of mom for my kids? So here's a couple of things that we can touch upon is, do you overparent, underparent, or just get confused as to how to parent because of your own upbringing? When we are raised in dysfunction, we tend to overcompensate our parenting style. That was me 100%. Overcompensation on everything. And here's a couple of ways that we tend to parent. We are highly attuned to our children's needs and emotions. I would say yes, 100% on that. I wanted to know every minute thing that they were thinking, feeling, going through, because I wanted to be their savior. Listen, guys, there's only one savior. He's up there. It's not me. It's not you. You can't be that for your kids. We prioritize emotional safety and communication. So, of course, you know, we want to make sure our kids are happy. We want to make sure that nobody is, you know, hurting them emotionally. We think that the more we can communicate, and that, you know, when I love when moms go, my kids tell me everything. And I'm like, they don't tell you everything. You think they tell you everything. There still are things they're not going to tell you, nor should they. Kids need to separate and find their own thing. But it's like there's this need that if they tell you everything, that means they love you more. And that's not necessarily true. That also can be an enabling. So that there's a whole subject on that, but we're not going to get into that today. We might overcorrect at times or be overly cautious or permissive out of fear of repeating past patterns. This is very true because we can do things where I remember I tended to always want to feel what was going on with my girls, and I wanted to make sure that they were safe at all costs. And so I was overly cautious with them. I would say I was not overly permissive, but I've seen parents who are just like, yeah, just let them go do whatever. And it's unsafe places or things. And that just would freak me out. But I was always overly cautious. I wanted to make sure that they were safe at all times because I was not safe as a child. I was put in very unsafe circumstances many, many times. And so that was something that tucked away in my brain, tucked away in my gut and my body, where I was like, I will never put my child through that kind of situation. I never want them to feel this feeling, the thing that I felt as a little girl. And so those are those things we put on to our kids, and we're trying to map out this parenthood style. And the thing with, the over communicating and things is that if my girls didn't tell me every feeling that was going on with them, I thought I was being a bad parent. Well, they don't want to talk to me. That means that they don't trust me. It means they don't love me. It was just this weird kind of thing, and I had to learn to just pull back and let them free think, let them think on their own. This is the whole point of raising children, is also you're raising them up to be able to function on their own eventually. They shouldn't need you for everything at every point of their childhood. They should be able to self soothe and make their own decisions, make their own mistakes. Let me say that again, make their own mistakes. This is what I see in society these days, is that there's so much done for kids. Like, I remember when we would walk to school when we were kids, probably further than we were supposed to by ourselves. It's like we get up now, we're cooking breakfast for our kids, we have their lunches ready. Some of these moms are still getting their kids dressed, and they're like 6, 7, 8 years old. I'm like, they know how to put shoes and socks and pants on. They should. We're driving them to school. Oh, they call in junior high, I want you to bring me McDonald's. Okay, I've done that too. It's fine. But like, sometimes they demand it, and it's all the time. And it's like, wait, I made you lunch. Well, I don't want that lunch. I want you to bring me McDonald's. You bring them McDonald's. You have all their clothes folded when they get home. You're taking them to the games. It's just on every single level. The way kids grew up in the 60s and 70s is so much different than the way the kids are now. We overcompensate and want to do everything for them, and we think we're being a good parent. And a lot of parents who have been raised in trauma think that that is necessary in order for them to be a good parent. And we're raising these kids that are very entitled, and they don't want to struggle. They don't want to make a mistake. And you're there every second so they don't make a mistake. If they miss their homework, you are running it to the school. There's just so many things that you can go down these rabbit holes that we do so that our kids don't make mistakes. And I'm here to tell you, I have done some of those things. I've raced the homework thing. They forgot. They were 30 minutes over a hill at a private school. I'd get in the car, take the homework to them, so mad because it wrecked my day. And after a couple times, I was like, no, I'm not bringing it. And if that means you get a bad grade, guess what? You get a bad grade because I told you multiple times. And so you let them fall. And they are so angry about that. But I will tell you, it strengthened them and it helped them decide, I need to make a plan. I need to be independent. I need to do these things. From that failure rises up to become a strong person because you learn from your mistakes. I think that as a parent, when my kids were younger, is I was fearful of everything and fatalistic of the outcomes. And I never wanted them to feel unsafe or abandoned, things that I experienced. So even when they weren't feeling those feelings, I was putting those kind of feelings on them. Like, no, we can't do that. It's unsafe. And they're like, what? It's not unsafe, Mom. It's fine. I'm like, no, you can't do it. And I remember just feeling fearful of anytime I couldn't have control over something. I think I did fall into parenting discipline that I had experienced, even though I had made a silent agreement that I would never do that. I had to correct that right away. Rage will come up in you unexpectedly because kids will do that to you. They like hit those points, and I learned, this is when I would frustrate my mom. This is what she would go to, is like physical violence. And so I remember, like starting to get that rage built up in me. And I learned right away, like, nope, I can't. I don't want to be that kind of parent. I can't do that. And so I had to learn how to walk away from situations. I had to learn the power of the pause, just take a break, let me breathe for a minute, and do that before reacting. If you're someone who had to parent yourself, then you may struggle seeing your child as vulnerable. The attitude is, well, I had to do that when I was 8, so they should be able to do that too. Or you feel like you have to be the perfect parent because you should know how to do it by now because you've raised a parent and yourself. And so both of those things are really responses to how you've been raised. And so you have to kind of look at those things and say, well, you may have had to do it at this young age, but that didn't make it right. That just meant that you had to do it. You don't want to put your kids in situations. So even though we want our kids to learn and be independent and learn by things, make it age appropriate. Don't just throw them out to the wolves and be like, well, I had to do this when I was 5, so now you have to do it too, and you're going to frighten your child. It's really the same kind of things that you felt as a child too at that age that made you so scared and fearful and unprotected. You don't want to throw those habits onto your child by saying, well, I made it through, so it's fine. This is where we fall back into bad family habits. Is like, well, we did it back in the day and we were fine, and look at us, we're fine. And I'm like, oh, you're not really fine, but you survived. So just be aware that there are things sometimes where you think of, you go back into, well, I had to do this, so they should be able to do it too. No, you didn't want to do that. You had no choice. And that back in the day, you couldn't say no to your parents. Kids can say no now, and hopefully in most families, and feel safe with that. And then it can be a conversation. If it can't, then that's an issue. You should be able to have a communication back and forth. So the last one is having difficulty trusting others and getting help with your kids. This was a big one for me. It took time for me to realize that not everyone was unsafe, because I would say I was put in a lot of unsafe positions, and so I didn't trust people a lot because I was the brunt of what happens when your mom leaves you with just whoever. And so I was living proof that those bad things can happen. And so that became a trigger for me. But I would say this is tricky because you do need to be aware, especially in this day and age, that you want to find people that you can trust, that your kids feel super comfortable around. And this is where you look for cues. And it's not a given anymore that people have to do sleepovers or things like that. It can totally be up to whatever makes you feel safe and your child feels safe. That's the main thing. I think when you can find those trusted people, it really helps you grow as a person to know that, the world isn't all evil. It's not all one thing or all the other. There's a mix, and you just have to take your time to find those things. And it's a beautiful lifeline when you can find someone to manage the heaviness of parenthood. So, all this to say, we do have to be cautious about learning or unlearning some things that don't serve us from the way we've grown up. So, the good news is this: if you have come from a dysfunctional upbringing, you can actually be a deeply self-reflective parent. Through therapy, journaling, and self-help, you can be the most empathetic and strong mom. You may be especially good at noticing when your child feels unseen or unsafe, and you are going to be able to respond with compassion. You will have healthy boundaries for both yourself and your child. Communication can become pure and open even when it's hard. So the bottom line is this: we can become awesome, not perfect, moms in spite of how we grew up. Just be willing to unpack the things that were not healthy or safe and replace them with good, healthy, and safe habits. I hope this episode was good for you. I loved going through this again. I think it's always helpful, again, to just learn new techniques. If you're a new mom, These are good habits to start falling into. And if you've been a mom for a while, you can go back and have good conversations with your adult kids and maybe do some things that can be change worthy now. So until next time, peeps, I will see you later.